Lore or story in Crash Team Rumble seems to be a bit of an oxymoron. Some people may have looked at the title of this video and said, what lore? There's literally no single player and nothing technically makes sense. It's just an offshoot multiplayer game. What if I told you that if you know where to look, there is quite an interesting breadcrumb trail that might reveal the deeper lore behind Crash Team Rumble. Now, before we continue, there is some legitimate backstory behind Crash Team Rumble's Wumpa collecting antics. During a Toys for Bob Q&A, they said, quote, "The great Wumpa games originally came from humble beginnings, springing forth as an offshoot activity tied to the Wumpa Island's annual Wumpa Harvest. Inhabitants from the various islands would form teams and compare how many Wumpa could be gathered on a given day. What initially started as a light diversion has now grown into a cutthroat competition, filled with the fiercest competitors any dimension has ever seen. This annual competition is such a monumental event that onlookers will even witness hated rivals banding together to become the Crash Team Rumble champions." So, quite frankly, it seems pretty cut and dry as to what Crash Team Rumble is. It started off as friendly competition to see how many Wumpas could be harvested during the Wumpa harvesting time. It eventually became a sport that everyone would sit down and watch. So, that's it? Is that all? Is it time to wrap up the video? No, of course not. You already know what we have to do. We have to overthink and overanalyze this. Even if we took this statement as fact, there are plot holes the size of Wumpas with it. Let's start with this line here. Onlookers will even witness hated rivals banding together to become the Crash Team Rumble champions. For this, let's rewind to Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. Now, if you don't know, Tawna shows up from a completely different universe. She had to become her own hero where she came from, but this was not quite by choice. We find out later on in the game that Entropy's female counterpart, who we will call Femtropy for the rest of the video, had actually brutally killed both Crash and Coco from her dimension.
What's the matter, hero? Couldn't solo this one?
Let her go!
The last time I killed her friends, her screams were exquisite.
Huh?
Delicious.
No!
This is why Tawna takes charge and goes rogue from the group and wants to face both Entropies by herself. She can't handle seeing both Crash and Coco harmed, or worse, killed again.
I'm not losing you guys in this dimension too. I'll handle this.
But we're a team.
Now, let's fast forward to Crash Team Rumble Cinematic. Here, we can see Tawna and Entropy literally being on the same team. To make this even crazier, they are literally fist bumping. What? So now that the Wumpa games are starting, both Femtropy and Tawna are just fine? Murdering her best friends is now just water under the bridge for the sake of competition?
Oh look, the triumphant hero comes to try and save the day. Pitiful.
I'm gonna make sure you never hurt my friends again.
Do you wanna partner up?
Oh my gosh, yes!
Besties!
But that's not the only thing that doesn't make sense. It says that the games were started by the original inhabitants of the Wumpa Islands, so the natives, and likely Papu Papu, would have been a part of those original games, as Cortex and his mutant party brigade came much later. So you would assume that Papu Papu and his tribe would be here partaking in the games, right? Because, you know, they kind of officially started the games. Well, at the time of the recording of this video, months after the game has been released, Papu Papu nor any of the original inhabitants of Wumpa Islands are contestants in these death matches over fruit. Now, let's get even more technical. The wording says that they would do this competition during the Wumpa fruit harvesting season on the Wumpa Isles. Yet, we are seeing Wumpa fruit show up in crates in different quantum dimensions where, of course, Wumpa fruit is not native. Additionally, there being a harvest time suggests that there is a finite amount of time when Crash Team Rumble can technically be played. There's just too many holes to suggest that this is the actual story and lore of Crash Team Rumble. But if you know where to look, there seems to be a small, hidden story. To get that story, we have to look at another member of our Bandicoot crew, and that person is Coco. Some backstory on Coco's origins. Coco is, of course, Crash Bandicoot's sister and Cortex's second Bandicoot creation that we know of. Very early on, she showed a much higher intelligence in comparison to Crash Bandicoot. She even started to dabble into technology thanks to Engine basically introducing it to her. She apparently even developed a bit of an addiction to video games. We can see this on display on this social media post where she's playing Uncharted 4, and at the end of Crash 4 where she's playing a game with Tawna. Now, I want you to pay attention to the ending of Crash 4.
Almost there, get the yes!
Victory! Hey, Crash, you're in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So Coco and Tawna are playing a cooperative game. When they win, Coco screams "Wumpa victory," and when the next match starts, they count down to the next match beginning. All three of these things perfectly match an actual match of Crash Team Rumble. Additionally, when you 100%ed Crash 4 and go to the very same TV and hit it over and over again, the fifth spin you actually see is an early logo to Crash Team Rumble. This implies that Crash Team Rumble, as in the game itself, actually exists within the universe of Crash Bandicoot, meaning it's all a simulation within a video game. It's a video game within the universe of another one. This can be further evidenced by the concept art here for Crash 4, as we can see both Crash and Coco playing Crash Team Racing, another spin-off series of Crash like Crash Team Rumble. This can be further confirmed by the fun facts in Crash Team Rumble's loading screens, where it literally says, "Remember when Tawna and Coco were playing Crash Team Rumble at the end of Crash 4? While these facts can be seen as just throwaway gags and jokes between matches, there is enough evidence to suggest that this is potentially true." Also, back in 2020, the project was initially called Wumpa League. This plays into the fact that Coco screams "Wumpa victory." But more importantly, if you 100%ed Crash 4 and get the end scene epilogue, you can see that there is an MLG-inspired gaming competition where the banners have these giant W's on them, which at the time would have been referencing Wumpa League, which literally means that there would have been a Crash Team Rumble competitive event that happens within the world of Crash Bandicoot. This is also where Catbat shows up, which we know is a playable character in Rumble. This explanation explains why Tawna and Tropy are teaming up in this cinematic even though they are sworn enemies, because they are not the actual characters themselves. They are the avatars of two other players within the Crash universe that chose them as their character for this match. It also explains why they can compete all year round and outside of the Wumpa harvesting time. But there's a few more holes to patch up. What about the story of the origins of Crash Team Rumble? And why is it taking place across different dimensions with outer dimensional beings like the Quantum Masks? Wouldn't the game's designer within the Crash universe have to know where these places were and who these characters are? Well, shockingly, there is a potential answer. I believe that Crash Team Rumble, in its entirety and within the Crash Bandicoot universe, was made by Coco. Think about it for a second. Whoever made the game would have to know who the Quantum Masks are, what they can do, who each character is, and have the ability to make games. The only person who fits the bill and fits the bill perfectly is Coco. Additionally, if we go back to the fun tips that show up between matches, it is suggested that Coco is the one who programmed Crash Team Rumble. So, with everything placed together, here is my overall theory. Before the events of Crash Bandicoot 4, Coco was programming a game. She wanted to make something close to home and decided to take inspiration from the local Wumpa harvesting competition, the Wumpa Games. However, as the events of Crash 4 happened, Coco was inspired by all the places that she had went to, from the hazardous wastes to Tranquility Falls. She also was inspired by all the people she met on the way, whether they were good or bad. She would program and design a game with all of this in mind until she finished her first prototype at the end of Crash Bandicoot 4, called Wumpa League. She would essentially playtest the game and tweak it until it finally not only became Crash Team Rumble, but even a competitive esport. I know, it's a bit of a weird meta explanation to this whole game, but I wanted to dive in deep and try to figure out the lore behind Crash Team Rumble. But what do you think? Do you think this explanation is kind of sound? Comment below and let me know. Also, don't forget to check out this video where I actually spoke with Paul Yan, the creative director at Toys for Bob. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye!